Hey, we're Tony and Chelsea Northrup, and this is the Picture This Photography Podcast. Today's episode is why worse photographers are beating you. Like people that aren't making pictures as good as you, and yet they still seem to be succeeding more than you.
Yeah, and that's because sometimes the best photographers aren't always the most successful. So we're going to be taking you through some skills that we found can help make a photographer successful. It has nothing to do with actually taking pictures. But first, let's get a word in from our sponsor, Squarespace. Whether you're making a website or portfolio, Squarespace can help you with that. And it's so easy. If you can drag and drop, you can make it happen. Go to squarespace.com/Chelsea and use the coupon code Chelsea to get 10% off.
Thanks, Squarespace. Up first is negotiating skills. And this is something that you are fantastic at, Chelsea.
Yeah, I never realized how much of being a photographer involves negotiating. And this isn't just about contracts. This is about negotiating what a client wants or negotiating how you're going to make a job play out. And often it does involve negotiating contracts. I have worked on this a lot because I was very, very bad at it in the beginning because I'm not confrontational. So some of the things that I've learned are to understand your value and do your market research. You can't just put a price out there willy-nilly without knowing what your work is actually going for. So look around at photographers in your area, see what they're getting, look at the quality of their work, and then price your work accordingly or how you want it. Are you going up market and you're going to be like the luxury brand, or are you going to be the bargain brand in the area? You have to think all of that out before you're negotiating.
Somebody's going to come and they're going to say, hey, you're $20 more expensive than this other photographer. Why shouldn't I just go with them? And you need to have that answer. That's part of the negotiation. Your price cannot be arbitrary. You need to back every dollar up.
Yeah, and you can even say, I include this, I include that. Don't leave out that I don't have a sitting fee or whatever it is that you're doing differently. Sometimes people put a number out there for a job, and when someone counter offers, they get scared and they run away too fast. Like, oh, I don't want, like, you're afraid of the negotiation. Or sometimes you just fold immediately for a number that isn't actually good for you. Someone goes way under what you should be taking and you just agree with them anyway. I like to go into a negotiation knowing the very lowest number I would ever accept. And if they won't budge, I politely say, I'm sorry, that's not something that I can make happen, and good luck. I want to really stress, a lot of people, negotiation can be emotional and they feel they have to get like worked up or be firm like in the movies. It's not like the movies. You should just be very polite and professional. And the truth is, whenever you're negotiating, nobody wants to give in to like a jerk. They want to do a nice person a favor. So if you're being pleasant, they're more likely to just say, okay, we'll just do it your way.
I read a book on this and it genuinely changed my life. It was Negotiating for Dummies. I'm a big fan of the Dummies book. I don't have any relationship with them, but they explain things in a simple way. And I think if you're okay with reading a Dummies book, like if you can acknowledge to yourself, I am a dummy in this one particular field, then it can change your life. But I've had to make negotiations 1,000 times since I've read this book. And little lessons that I learned from the book come up all the time, and it's changed our business for both photography and YouTube and publishing and everything else. Whether you're negotiating a car or whatever, these skills will be useful to you.
Yeah, I think most photographers are also small business owners, and you just have to wear so many hats. I know I can seem overwhelming, but that's why we're kind of trying to break them out and just make it more digestible. Another extremely important thing that I've had to work on also is social and networking skills. So much of having your own business and being a photographer is actually getting out there and meeting people and shaking hands and confidently telling people what you do and what you can offer. Ooh, I was so bad at that in the beginning. I would just hide away. And I learned from the other photographers around me how important that is. When they opened a new studio in a town, they'd go door to door and shake hands with business owners. They'd introduce themselves to people, give out their cards, and, their name would stick. And when people did need a photographer, they would go to them. We see this even in our line of work with like YouTubers, and not just photography YouTubers and all of that in the business world, is that people want to help someone that is courteous, polite, giving, approachable. And sometimes you see people get a little tough in business and they can be like self-centered or egotistical or kind of have these negative traits they may think they need to succeed. And I see that backfire. I see people go out of their way to not help them. So having these social skills and being courteous, it's going to help you, maybe not immediately, but it's going to give you peace of mind and people will appreciate it.
Most portrait photographers I've talked to, when you ask them where their business comes from, they say it's almost entirely referrals.
Yeah.
That means their entire income relies on their social and networking skills. But it's not just that. Like if you're a landscape photographer and you want to sell your pictures in a gallery, guess what? You're going to have to be friends with the gallery owners. And gallery owners, that's how they pick people. Yeah, they look for talented artists, but unless you're Andy Warhol, they're not going to put up with you having a bad attitude. So make friends, be nice. Like it seems super simple.
What's interesting about that is that we've had this great opportunity to meet so many people at the top of their field, CEOs and owners and just highly regarded photographers. And I would go into it nervous, thinking someone that successful might be intimidating or rude or have an ego. And I found that the people at the very top are so charming and polite and nice and socially able, and that people that usually are struggling more are the ones that are kind of the divas and not as nice. And so I think to get to the top, you have to have those social skills and be polite to people.
Yeah, you're right. They're at the top because they're nice, because they're kind, because they're likable and charismatic.
Yeah.
Develop those skills for yourself and it'll make a huge difference, not just in photography, but in other fields.
Yeah, and you can hone that by collaborating with other people in your area. You don't have to look at everyone as competition. We're all in it together. We can all learn from one another. Teaching people under you that are struggling, help them out. You don't know where they'll be. I've had people that were way bigger than me when we were first starting YouTube be like real jerky and rude when I reached out. And then here they are 5 years later reaching out, and you don't have to hold a grudge, but I'd rather help the person that was nice. So I pass them by. Just be kind to other people around you.
And learn to accept kindness from others, even ask for favors. This is something that I struggle with all the time. My life could definitely be better if I was better at asking for favors and accepting help. But I'm just like one of these independent people who tries to do just everything myself. So advice from somebody who's bad at this is learn to help other people.
Yeah.
Or learn to accept help from other people. Both. Do both.
Yeah.
Organizational skills. That's not a strong point for either one of us.
No, I put this in here because I have so many things to learn too, and I just had to get it out there. My organizational skills are so incredibly poor, and it's very important. I do work on it. I have all sorts of time tracking apps, and I try to write out lists and have set deadlines for myself. So
we have a rule where every new thing goes into the calendar. Whether it's a photo shoot or a soccer practice, like everything has to go into a shared calendar so we can all kind of see what's going on. We're not 100% with that. Much of organizational skills, I think, is self-discipline, like forcing yourself to do the thing that you don't want to do right now.
Yeah.
I don't know how to talk you into self-discipline, like not you, but like anybody out there.
Well, or me either. And I'm incredibly impulsive. I like to do the thing I want to do right now, and that doesn't always work. But it's important because it helps you with your efficiency, it helps you manage your time better, and it helps you maximize the profitability of your time. And when I go in and I start analyzing where I'm putting my time and what I'm doing, sometimes I find I'm burning a lot of time on something that's not actually very important. And I see this in some photographers where they're spending too much time on the editing, or they're not charging enough for the editing. They're saying, oh, editing these portraits, that'll just take me like a couple minutes. And then if you really sit down and manage your time and record yourself, you realize, oh, it's taking me 30 minutes to edit one picture, and it's going to take me an extra 2 weeks to finish this photo shoot. So you can really help yourself out as a business owner and as a photographer if you can just be better at your time management.
I'm pretty obsessed with efficiency myself.
You're very efficient, yeah.
I would encourage people to think about the value they get out of their own time. So if you are spending a lot of time editing pictures for people, are they appreciating it, or are you going over the top? Like if you make a picture more perfect by spending 2 hours editing it, but the client doesn't notice the differences, then maybe you're better off just doing a quick 10-minute edit and handing it off to them and then waiting for them to complain and doing some more.
Oh, one more thing I'd like to add about this is that I see a lot of people get into a routine where they're doing the wrong thing over and over again because it's comfortable. And sometimes you have to analyze that and break out of it. using editing again, you might be able to buy a $100 plugin that does what you've been doing by hand. It costs $100 up front, but you would have saved yourself thousands of dollars in a year by saving that time going in and taking out every blemish or whatever it might do. So sometimes you got to spend that money to make money, and understanding how you spend your time is going to help you make those decisions.
Accounting and finance skills. This is another one that seems super lame. Like, it's not as cool as camera settings or depth of field, but it's something that has changed my photography and changed my life in general. I used to work at a big company and I was the IT nerd, but I was lucky enough to be put in the room with CXOs and such. So I was dealing with these like Harvard MBAs, and they were using a lot of vocabulary that was just missing me, like things like capital expenditures versus expenses. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what debits and credits were. So I bought Accounting for Dummies. And I read the whole thing. I really love these dummies books. They can change your life. And it made such a big difference to me, not just because now I could speak corporate finance, but for my own personal finances and my small business finances. I started to understand things like depreciation, what something actually cost me as I use it. I learned how to keep track of money that was flowing in and out and ensure that I always had the cash I needed. And this is such an important skill for everybody. So I recommend you pick up Accounting for Dummies or something. I don't care what it is, but put some time into learning this. You can just put 4 hours in.
Yeah.
Spend 20 minutes a day reading a book like that for the next week, and you will retain that knowledge for the whole rest of your life. It's a really good investment in time.
Absolutely. And what's more sad than an extremely talented photographer that cannot be a professional photographer because they can't manage their finances or get some of this seemingly boring business stuff under their belts? Like, you have to learn this stuff. And you really have to learn it once and then just implement it. And it's going to help you so much. Budgeting and investing is such an important one, especially with photographers. I think sometimes we have that desire to spend our money on the fun stuff, right? Like a new lens or a new camera. And sometimes we don't work out if that's actually going to benefit us. That money, you may find, would be better spent on a new studio space or on some props for your clients that are popular. You might be getting more jobs by doing something like that. So start looking at how you spend your money and start looking at what's making you money, and then learn how to manage your finances.
I find people can be incredibly cheap. Like, for example, they need to set up a website. And if you use Squarespace or sponsor, it will cost you, after the free trial, it'll cost you some dollars per month.
Yeah.
And people will shy away from that. They'd rather just be like, oh no, I have an Instagram, it's free. But you're losing money because of that, because that's not the best way to present yourself. You will make that money out by putting out a good presence for yourself. And that can apply to a lot of things. You know, a faster computer might cost you some money, but maybe over the next 2 years, it'll be so much faster that it will make you more efficient. You'll get more done, and then your career will advance further, and you'll be making more money. Think about things long term, and don't be afraid of those investments. Like, that's what the word being cheap means.
Yeah.
When you make the less expensive choice, but it ends up costing you in the long term, you're being a cheapskate.
Yeah, absolutely. And another example might be investing in buying examples of your work on like canvases or prints to show your clients that they can buy that later. Sometimes you do need to buy something that's expensive and maybe not exciting to you to make money in the long run.
So we're going to take a break and talk about our sponsor. And after the break, we're going to talk about a lot of cool tips, including the way my nerdy background has really helped out our photography careers.
It really has. So one way you can help out your photography career, as Tony was mentioning, is to invest in a website or a professional portfolio, not just an Instagram where things are shown in chronological order, but a site where you can control the first thing your client sees. They know how to contact you. They might get to know more about your prices. And you can do that with a Squarespace website or portfolio, and it also includes a store. It's so easy. If you can drag and drop, you can make your own. It takes about an hour to make, and you can do it for free with a 14-day free trial, no credit card needed. You don't have to remember to cancel. I hate that. Go to squarespace.com/Chelsea and use the coupon code Chelsea to get 10% off if you do decide to move on from that free trial.
Thanks, Squarespace.
So we're talking about all of the non-photography skills you can do to make you a successful photographer, because it's not always about being the photographer with the best photography. It's often about being like the most well-rounded person and photographer and business person that can make you sad if you're not good at those other things. One really important one is self-care. And that doesn't mean buying like a new hair gel or anything. It means investing in yourself, your own happiness, what's good for you so that you can be more productive in every other way of your life. And it's about managing your stress. Tony, I know so many super successful photographers that have another passion or another outlet for their stress. It could be fishing. It's often exercise. It can be getting a massage. I know one that gets a massage all the time. Whatever relaxes you and gives you something else to take you away from the stress of work, to recharge, to reboot. You need that in your life.
Whoa, no, I got the hustle. I'm just going to work 100 hours a week for the rest of my life, and that's how I'm going to make the money.
A hustle is often needed, but I don't like the idea that you need to hustle all of the time and burn yourself out. I don't find anything admirable about that. And we actually made a podcast recently about how we were burned out, and we kind of stopped and sat down and realized we were going nonstop since 2009 and maybe needed to just kind of take a little bit of a break and think about what we wanted in our careers. It's okay to slow down and it's okay to take care of yourself. You have to.
Life is a marathon and not a sprint.
Yeah.
You can sprint for a little bit,
Yeah.
but you better slow it down or you're not going to make it to
yourself.
the end.
You have to take care of your body too. Get exercise, get sleep. I feel so bad when people are getting 2 hours of sleep to work more. You need sleep. You just need it. So take the time to be good to yourself.
Legal skills are actually really important to photographers, and I developed some amount of legal skills because I could type like a demon when I was in college. Like I could do 120 words a minute. And I signed up as a temp worker, and they just kept sending me to all these law firms because at the time, lawyers couldn't type. They would always just record it into a microphone, and then you would do dictation.
Wow.
So I was great at that. But I was a hard worker, and when you're a hard worker, they start giving you more and more tasks. So soon I was reading contracts, and pretty soon I was like writing contracts and just having the lawyer review it. I was doing like serious stuff. And I don't expect everybody to go out and do that. But I do want to convey a couple of lessons that I learned. And one is to read contracts, like actually read your contracts. Nobody wants to read them. Contracts are like designed so you don't read them so that they can slip some sneaky stuff in there.
Yes.
Read your contracts carefully. Take the time to do it. It's going to hurt. It's going to like physically hurt. You're going to want to like just look at your phone. Force yourself to read it. If there's a word you don't understand, you Google it and find out what it means, and make sure that you understand every single section of this. This comes up all the time when you're working for somebody else as a photographer. You might be signing away all of your rights to the photos. You might be signing away more long-term rights, and you could end up losing money on deals or end up really frustrated on it. Once you learn how to read the contracts, you'll find out you can actually change contracts too. You'll be like, oh, Clause C here says that I don't have any rights to use my own photos, but I want to be able to use my own photos on my portfolio. And they'll say, yeah, we can strike that. That's fine.
Yeah, often they'll just strike it out, you initial it, and you can change the contract. That's why it's important to read it. We actually had an experience with a contract, and we did read it. Tony read it, thank goodness, because we could have lost a big part of our business. We went to New York to talk with a producer about a travel show. This was before we made Wanderlust. And they wanted to make a travel show for us where we do photography, and it was very exciting, and we were already talking about where destinations would be and how the show would go. We get the contract, and Tony's reading it, and in the fine print, not worded quite clearly, there's a clause that says that the company would then have get a cut of all of our books and all of our merchandise and everything that we sell.
Yeah. They just snuck that right in there.
They snuck that in there. That had nothing to do with them. We had everything. We had all of our books and everything before we ever had any kind of agreement with them, and they would not back off of it. They wanted a cut of everything that we made, so we walked away from that contract. But had we not, who knows? Maybe we wouldn't be able to run our business right now.
Yeah, patiently reading contracts has saved me many times.
And they would not back down from that clause, so you know that they had planned to implement that clause.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still don't read those software EULAs, though.
No.
I always skip to the bottom. I don't know what I'm signing up for. It's definitely a bad idea.
I'm not a god. I can't read that.
I would also suggest you learn a lot about copyright law. And we have other podcasts that really dig into this. You need to understand the difference between taking inspiration from somebody and actually violating somebody else's copyright, both for when people are copying you and when you might be copying somebody else. Like, what buildings can you take a picture of? Can you take pictures of people in the street? And then how can you use those pictures? These are vital issues for every photographer, whether you're amateur or pro.
Absolutely. And then you need to understand lawsuits as well, because it happens. You see wedding photographers get sued. You see that wedding photographers sue their clients. These things do happen. And one thing you'll learn is that no one wants to sue. It's extremely unpleasant. We did it once because somebody got their lawyer involved, and we didn't really want to go through with it, but we thought, you know what? This is an experience other photographers will have. So we went through with one lawsuit and we made a video on it. It's called Someone Stole Our Photo and we got $60,000. It's called something like that. But it's interesting, and we walk you through how grueling it is and awful and emotionally draining. I don't ever recommend suing.
I always hear photographers being like, oh, he ripped you off. You need to sue him.
You need to sue.
Like, okay, this is somebody who doesn't have a lot of legal experience if you're throwing around lawsuits like that.
I had someone just write me an email about how a bank took a picture he took of his wife and is using it in their branding, using it everywhere. And he's been in this legal battle for 2 years, and they're so stressed out. And the bank is just like, the bank is being awful to them.
Yeah, most of the time nobody wins in a lawsuit.
Ugh, nobody wins.
Okay, my nerdy IT skills. Not everybody knows this, but I have been like a hardcore IT nerd since the time I was 9. Like, my dad pulled a computer literally out of the trash at his work and a bunch of C manuals, and I learned how to program it. And then after I was done being a law temp, I went to work at different tech firms, including like BBN, the company that invented the internet. I wrote like 30-something books about computers and all this. So I find these IT skills to be constantly useful in my new life as a not IT nerd, to the point where I don't know how non-nerdy photographers get by. Like, if you're not a little bit of an IT nerd, how do you handle things like continuously backing up your files? Because we've all had, like, every one of us in the office has had a hard drive fail or a computer fail or something, but thankfully I'm this IT nerd, so I always have backups of stuff. I'm always moving files around.
I can tell you. So I have an IT nerd in my office. It's you. And you hate that job, but I'm getting to a point. I've met other non-techie photographers, and they hire somebody.
It sounds like a really good idea.
They just straight up hire somebody, because you do need those IT skills. And maybe if you don't have much money, it's just someone you hire every once in a while to come in for a couple of hours. But I know photographers that have full-time people for those things. I mean, they have other tasks as well, but it's a requirement that they're able to handle the IT stuff.
And if you're not an IT nerd, it's probably worth it for you to invest some time in learning basic operating system stuff like file management, learning about bandwidth and how long it's going to take you to upload your pictures to a cloud backup service with this type of connection, this type of internet connection, you know, the difference between upstream and downstream. These things, as a photographer, we're pretty much constantly dealing with.
Yeah, we've lost a few computers, and we would have lost all of our photos if it weren't for you, Tony.
Performance optimization on computers is really important too, because I see people spend $5,000 on some new computer and then they complain like, oh, my Lightroom isn't any faster than it was before. And that's because they just kind of blindly pick some new computer and they don't understand what components they need to make it faster and what they don't. And so they're out like thousands of dollars with no value for it. We have a couple of videos that can help you understand what to look for in a new computer, so check those out. Setting up websites is also really important too, and we're not just circling back to plug Squarespace once again. I do like it. They make it really easy for you actually, but other aspects of it, like making sure that you have the proper search engine optimization, that's important. That is the difference between somebody looking for Oklahoma City photographer and finding you or finding somebody else. So make sure that you understand things like search engine optimization, website design, how the user interface in a website should be set up to guide people through the pipeline of discovering you to actually contacting you and scheduling work. These are important skills that you should have if you want to be successful.
All right, here's a skill I've also had to work on, and that's boldness and risk-taking. Not so much the risk-taking. We've risked a lot. I mean, we've invested our last dollar at times into the business. when we really didn't want to because it was scary. It can be so scary to take risks with your business, but sometimes you have to do it. And boldness can also be difficult. That's one I still struggle with. And I hear a lot of people come to me and say, how do I go approach somebody when I'm taking street photography? Should I just walk up to someone and take a photo? Or how do I get people out of the way when I'm taking a landscape shot? And the truth is, you have to be a little bit bold and you have to put yourself out there. You don't have to be rude. You can very politely communicate with strangers and know sometimes they might not be polite back and that you have to just kind of shrug it off. So learn how to approach people. If you're doing family shoots, this is important. You might not want to say, oh, hey, your shirt's all messed up, but, you might have to tell someone, hey, tuck in your shirt a little bit. Hey, get the kids' hair out of their face. Or, you're going to have to guide people, whether you're doing that or street or politely asking someone to move for a landscape shot. So don't be afraid to be bold and be polite at the same time. That's a very important skill.
If you're a portrait photographer or a real estate photographer in somebody's house, your job is like 80% just moving stuff around. You are pulling the dirty dishes out of the sink and moving them into a different room temporarily, or moving this trash can or moving this plant or tidying stuff up.
Yeah.
Because it's either the foreground or the background of your photos. But if you're shy, you might just end up taking the picture as is because you don't want to bring it up. Be bold about it. Grab stuff. And also, especially for landscape and even wildlife photographers, if you're out and about street photography, you're going to be in people's way sometimes. And this is one that still bugs me so much. I hate being in people's way. I hate the idea that I would be inconveniencing somebody, and still sometimes it makes me miss a shot. But other times on my good days, I confidently stick myself in somebody's way, get my shot, and then get out of the way. That shot can mean a lot to me, and me temporarily inconveniencing someone else isn't actually that big of a deal to them. So it's a trade-off you make. And for me, I always think it's never worth it to me to put somebody out just the slightest bit. But if you're going to be a good photographer, you have to say to yourself, my work here is very important. And if it inconveniences other people a little bit, that can be worth it.
Yeah, but you can make it fun for them too. I mean, I've seen professional street photographers that will interact with someone, take a shot and say, oh, I love the colors of your shirt or something like that. And then it's not really an inconvenience.
Yeah, most people are happy to do those kinds of things. And most people want to help other people out. So if you say, hey, could you all step aside for a second so I can get this picture?
Yeah.
It'll actually make them feel good to help you out. So just acknowledge that.
Okay, so one of the challenges of all these things is sometimes you don't know what you don't know. So guys, did we miss something? Should we be working on something else? Is there something that you discovered non-photography related that really helped your photography career? Comment down below and help everybody out. I'm sure you all have some great advice to contribute. Thank you, Squarespace, for making this show possible. If you want to try out your very own Squarespace website or portfolio, you can do a free 14-day trial. Just go to the link below in the description or go to squarespace.com/Chelsea and use the coupon code Chelsea to get 10% off.
Thanks, Squarespace.